I can remember exactly where I was when I had a conversation with my editor at the New York Times, Ron Lieber. I was behind my house in Park City. There's a trail system that starts right behind my house. I was out walking, as I often did. I would have telephone calls with, I'm pointing to my ears, earphones in, and I would walk on these trails while I was talking to people. And my friend and editor Ron Lieber says to me, Carl, what are you going to tell your kids? Like if somebody asked you for advice, at this point the book was out and some cool things had happened. And Ron was saying, hey, like if somebody asked you for advice, what would you tell them? And I was like, Ron, I got nothing, right? Like I got nothing in terms of career advice. I've got nothing. And he didn't buy it. He was like, I said, honestly, it's luck. A huge amount of luck. And he didn't buy it. He's like, what would you tell your kids? And I said, look, seriously, I got nothing. I couldn't think of any transferable, and that's the key, sort of repeatable or transferable principle from what had happened to me. Now, he kept pushing and, more phone calls and more emails and more reminders like, hey, I want you to keep thinking about it. And I kept getting asked. So I came, like the one thing, and I've developed a couple others, but they're all around the same theme of play. The thought came to me like, if I was good at anything, it was playing in traffic and hoping to get hit. Right? Now I know that's the opposite of what your mother told you, but I think this to me is the key, especially when you think about marketing in a sort of social media age, is playing in traffic, right? Another way to think about this would be putting yourself at risk for good things to happen, right? Now, back to the story with Ron. Though, in fact, this is part of the question that gets asked all the time. Like, how could I get my work in a major publication? Well, people are actually asking us, like, how can I get my column in the New York Times? You're like, you can't really, right? Like, how would you go about doing that? Right? I realize you could go to journalism school and you could spend all that time in serious newspaper reporters. Yeah, but you and I are different than that. We're not talking about that. So how would you go about getting your work featured in a major publication? The only real way to do it is to play in traffic, right? And hope to get hit. Now, playing in traffic has to come with its own intrinsic value to you. Right? The process of writing something and sharing it with the world has its own rewards. The playing in traffic part is all a bonus. So let me just tell you how the thing happened with a major publication. I was writing a blog. Remember those? Weblog, shortened blog, right? I was writing posts on a blog called behaviorgap.com, my own blog. I wasn't guest posting for anybody. I wasn't there was no build up to this. I'd never taken any writing classes at school. Like, I'm not a journalist. I was writing a blog. And guess who was reading it? My mom and my sister. And I think that my sister was lying. I think it was just my mom. And it went this way for a while. Like, we're talking months and months, and I believe even like a year or two. Right? But certainly at least a year, I was writing, and I'd occasionally get a comment or something, but it was mainly crickets. And I kept doing it. And the reason I kept doing it was I don't know that I was, no, in fact, I can guarantee you the thought had never crossed my mind, maybe I'll do this for a major newspaper someday. And how would you even have that as a goal? You can't. So the thought I had when I was doing it was like, I've got this thing that I want to share. And I think it's reasonable now to think like, look, I really want to have an impact. I hope I can just help one person out there. Well, the way to do that is to play in traffic. And the dilemma with playing in traffic is you have no idea. Most of the time, I would dare say 80, 90% of the time, there's going to be no fireworks, no lightning, right? No excitement. It's a little bit like compound interest that way. It's short-term boring. Crickets, your mom and your sister, right? But then one, and you don't know which one. You don't know, but then one, hey, look at that, an arrow. One, that's probably, you may not even be, there's an arrow up there, right? One of them is you're going to get hit. You're going to get hit. Now, I love this concept of putting yourself at risk for good things to happen. You can't, so when I say it's luck, I actually mean there are moments in my career that are just flat out luck. I'm a huge fan of luck. I'm totally okay. I don't need to kick luck in the teeth like, no luck, and luck happens to people who work hard. I don't mean that kind of luck. I mean just straight up luck. Right? In fact, I'll tell you the story. I'm writing blog post, and then somebody, an advisor, and I've thanked this person profusely multiple times, but this now is over a decade ago. And if I remember right, on the spot, I think his name was Keith. An advisor emailed the editor at a major newspaper, and you know which paper, and said, you should really check this out. Now, I want you to understand something. I didn't ask the advisor to do that. Wasn't smart enough, wasn't even thinking about it. Then it arrived in the editor's inbox. Guess what else arrived in the editor's inbox that day? Hundreds of other things. It just so happened that on that day, for whatever reason, and I happen to know because I now get hundreds of those emails too, so you can't open them all, right? Like I open all the emails from readers, but pitch emails, you can't open. For whatever reason, the editor opened it that day. And for whatever reason, it struck a chord that day, right? That's called luck. But none of that would have happened without playing in traffic. Now, there's a great concept, and I give credit for the concept in the notes, right? Called increasing your luck surface area. I love that idea, right? We're just going to increase our luck surface area. We're going to put ourselves at risk by put ourselves at risk of something good to happen by playing in traffic. That's my look, I realize that if you want to scale as a real financial advisor, the work you do, the work you do, I don't want to sound like I'm preaching, but the work you do needs to be in the world. The impact you make can't be discounted. And the only way people are going to find out about it is one by one, if you are willing to do the boring work over time. And of all people who understand, small actions taken repeatedly over time produce massive results. It's called compounding, right? Playing in traffic is giving yourself the opportunity to get hit. It's the same as compounding, right? Over time, the number of times you have breaks, the number of times you get lucky is going to increase. Now, one really important thing about playing in traffic, right? We need you doing it. We need real financial advisors. And this is why this video, I'm just trying to shift the mindset here. It's not about billboards or ads, right? It's about playing consistently, being there, showing up to the conversation. Now, I'm hoping that I can convince you that you can find that activity has its own intrinsic value. And the intrinsic value is metacognition, right? Like thinking about what you're thinking. The other intrinsic value is playing in traffic is scary. You get used to doing scary things repeatedly. Like that all has its own intrinsic value. The getting lucky and getting hit part, those are bonuses, right? But we need, the more of us doing this, the more chance we all have of getting hit and changing the world, which is what we're all talking about. Now, one important thing about playing in traffic is this was going to be its own principle, but I decided to combine them. Is don't beg. You can't beg. Now, I break this rule every once in a while, and every time I do it, I regret it. And let me talk about what I mean by begging. You can't say, please retweet. You can't say, please send me your names. I get these emails. I don't think from any of you, but I get these emails. In fact, I get one repeatedly that really drives me crazy, and I've never had the heart to tell the person, but really it's none of you, right? It's a like marketing consultant who said like, hey, would you please respond with 10 of your friends that I could help? You know what this feels like because referrals, right? Like the referral, like the way you've been taught to ask for referrals feels icky, gross, terrible. We don't beg. We don't do it in social media. We don't say retweet. In fact, I remember one time I was having this conversation with somebody who had a lot more followers than me. We were talking about it, and he said something like, yeah, every time somebody asked me if I would, hey, so-and-so, would you please retweet this? Or why don't you ever retweet my work? That he said, what I feel like saying is, write something worth retweeting and I will. Right? Now, that can sound harsh, but that's how we want to act. Like we're going to put, instead of trying to figure out tricky ways to get people to share the work, tricky ways to get people to retweet it, instead of guilting people into it, we're going to just focus on creating great content. And I know that puts the pressure on your shoulders, but that's where we want it, right? We're going to focus on creating great content because then people will share it. Now, the only exception to this sort of asking is we never beg, but the only exception to this asking is to think, how is there a way that I can ask somebody to do something where they will say thank you for being asked, right? The way I think about it, is there a way for me to serve this person? Is there a way for me to present this material in a way that they'll see it as serving them by sharing it, not serving me? Because we don't like people, yes, we like to help needy people, but when it comes to marketing, we don't really like to help people who are appearing needy, right? So let me give you an example, right? At the end of an email, in a tweet, I think specifically the end of the email is the best place for this. Instead of saying, please forward this to your friends, right? That's placing a little like guilt and obligation on the reader. We could say something like, hey, if you enjoyed this email and you have friends or colleagues who it might help, feel free to pass it along to them. Right now we're serving other people. And again, let me give you another example. Inviting people to let's say you decide to hold a breakfast meeting and there's 12 seats. It's okay for you to say, hey, we keep these things, instead of saying your price for admission is that you have to bring someone, right? That would be needy and obligation. We can say, look, we purposely keep these things small. But if you've got a friend or colleague who you think would benefit from being there, let me know and I'll save a seat. See, that's different. So I always think, whenever I'm asking anybody to do something, is there a way that how does this serve them? And is there a way I could say it in a way that they would say, thank you. Oh, Carl, thank you, right? And if I can't, don't do it. Don't do it, right? So, play in traffic, and we don't beg. Those are important, really important principles as we spread the word, right? And again, every single day I want you to understand, part of what we're doing here is getting it in your bones, that the work you're doing is insanely valuable and the world needs to know about it. So this pressure of create stuff that's worth reading, right? So that you don't have to beg. I want you to feel a little pressure, but I want you to realize you're already doing it. The stuff that's happening in your head already is insanely valuable. You've forgotten because you've been doing it even if you've only been doing this for a couple of months, you've already forgotten. But many of you for years, the way you explain risk, you're taking it for granted now because you've been doing it. It's valuable. And we need more people to know it, which is why we need you, my friend, playing in traffic. Hello, my friend. I have this little sneaky hunch that you don't need any more tactics. You don't need any more tips or tricks, shortcuts. You don't need a 7-tweet thread or workshop on how to be a better financial advisor. The tactics are easy to find. You know what's hard? Is having the confidence to do them. You know what's hard? Is remembering when you feel a little beat up. What's hard is to remember the value that you provide. You know what's hard? Is those days when you wonder, is anybody listening? And I hope you understand, this is a mini therapy session, right? For me, it's hard. Is anybody listening? I know the tactics, especially when it comes to business development and growth and marketing. What's hard is to get yourself to do the things you already know how to do. And that's where the fellowship comes in. Think of the fellowship as a reminder, as a little injection of confidence anytime you need it. It's the 21 declarations of a real financial advisor. It's 21 declarations, 21 videos, 21 essays, anytime you need them on demand to remind you of the massive value that you provide so that you can have the confidence to keep doing the work, because the people, I'm pointing out the window, the people out there need you, right? And so if you like the sound of that and you enjoyed this little clip you just watched, please join the fellowship, because I would love to have you, because again, the people out there need you and they're not going to know where to find you unless you're doing the work. And you and I know it's hard to do the work unless we feel confident. So I want to make sure that you have 21 reasons to keep doing the work. Join the fellowship.